The Alien Academy gym was not a normal place. It was not like a human gym with simple machines and dumbbells. This was a place where young warriors of many species trained their bodies for war. The ceiling was high, filled with glowing lights from crystals. The floor shook sometimes because giant alien species lifted weights heavier than ground vehicles. Strange smells filled the air, a mix of burning energy, alien sweat, and metal dust. To most students, this gym was a holy ground. It was a place of pride, strength, and competition. Inside the gym, different species moved with confidence. A tall insectoid creature used 4 arms to climb a wall faster than any machine. A scaled reptilian lifted a stone block twice his size. 2 horned warriors clashed in combat practice, their heavy footsteps echoing through the air. Each species showed its power, its muscle, its speed. Every sound inside the gym was a display of dominance. And in the middle of this noise, laughter and shouts echoed as young aliens tried to outdo one another. They were proud. They were confident. They believed they were the future champions of the galaxy. Then the sound changed. The large doors of the gym opened. The heavy iron-like panels moved with a deep hiss. The laughter stopped. The clashing slowed. Even the weights that dropped to the floor echoed differently, as if the room itself had gone silent. All eyes turned toward the door. A human stepped inside. The figure looked small compared to the aliens around. The human body was lean, fragile-looking, and soft compared to armored scales, tough shells, or sharp claws of others. His skin looked bare, his muscles unremarkable, his height below average. He carried a simple training bag on his shoulder and walked with calm steps. Yet, the silence in the gym grew heavier with each step. Whispers began. "That's a human," one insectoid hissed. "Why is a soft creature here?" A reptilian growled softly. "This academy is for warriors, not weaklings," a horned fighter muttered. The human ignored the stares. He kept his pace slow, steady, and calm. His eyes moved across the room, not with arrogance, but with focus. He seemed to scan the machines, the fighters, and the weights. He walked like he belonged, yet everyone believed he did not. Fear did not spread instantly. At first, it was disbelief. Many aliens smirked, others laughed quietly, and some shook their heads. In their history, humans were often seen as weak, fragile, and unfit for war. They broke easily in hostile worlds. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. What was this human doing in the academy gym? The human placed his bag down on the floor. The sound of the small thud was louder than expected in the silence. He opened the bag slowly, pulled out simple cloth wraps for his hands, and tied them carefully. His movements were slow, controlled, and exact. Some aliens frowned. There was no rush in his actions, but there was also no hesitation. It was as if each step had a purpose. 2 tall reptilians whispered to each other, their tails flicking with amusement. "Maybe he got lost," one said. "Or maybe he wants to see how real warriors train," the other replied with a grin. Nearby, a horned fighter chuckled. "Look at his arms. They are thin. He cannot even lift a training stone." The human did not answer. He did not even glance at the one speaking. He simply tightened the wraps, tested the grip, and then stood in the center of the floor for a moment. His chest rose and fell with calm breaths. His eyes stayed steady. The silence deepened again. Some of the aliens began to feel a strange shift. Why was he so calm? Why did he not react to insults? Why did he not show fear? The reptilian champion of the gym, a massive figure with scales dark as iron, stepped forward. He towered over the human, nearly twice the height. His arms were thick, his claws sharp, his presence commanding. He crossed his arms and looked down at the human with a mocking grin. "You are lost, little softbone," he said in a deep voice. "This is not a playground. This is where warriors train." The human looked up at him, silent for a long moment. Then, with a voice calm and even, he replied, "I came to train. Same as you." The words were simple. but the calm tone carried weight. Around them, whispers turned to murmurs. A few laughed. A few frowned. Some felt uneasy. The reptilian narrowed his eyes. "You train here." His voice grew louder. "Do you think your fragile bones can survive one round in this place?" The human's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, not arrogance, just a small expression of patience. "I will find out," he said. The crowd shifted. Aliens stepped closer, forming a loose circle around the two. The silence was now heavy with tension. For many, this was a joke. For some, this was curiosity. For a few, it was something more. Something unknown. The reptilian leaned down, his hot breath brushing against the human's face. "You are in the wrong place, human. Weak ones do not belong in the academy gym." The human's eyes did not move away. He did not step back. His voice remained steady. "Strength is not only in muscles." The words hung in the air. The aliens blinked. Some scoffed. Some frowned deeper. But all of them felt the shift again, a strange feeling that did not belong in the gym. Fear was too strong a word yet, but unease had begun. Something about the human's calmness, his refusal to break under pressure, disturbed them. It was unnatural for a weak creature to stand so firm. The reptilian champion snarled and turned his head to the crowd. "Watch closely. This soft bone will learn his place." His claws flexed, his muscles bulged, and his tail struck the floor with a heavy thud. The human remained still, breathing slow, eyes clear, body relaxed. He did not raise his fists yet. He did not show any fear. The gym that was once filled with laughter and shouts was now filled with silence and waiting. Every student leaned forward, curious, doubtful, nervous. The arrival of one human had changed the air of the gym. It was no longer about training, no longer about pride. It had become something else, a question, a test, a story that every alien in the room would remember. And deep inside their minds, where pride tried to hide it, a small seed of fear had begun to grow. The circle of alien students tightened around the human and the reptilian champion. The silence in the gym was sharp, like the air before a storm. For the first time in many years, every training machine, every sparring match, every game of strength had stopped. All eyes focused on one small figure who had dared to step where no human was expected. The reptilian champion flexed his massive arms, the scales along his shoulders shifting like living armor. He was proud, confident, and sure of his power. His tail swayed slowly, the heavy tip tapping against the floor like a war drum. He smiled cruelly, showing sharp teeth. The smaller human, standing calm in the center, did not move away. He did not tremble. He simply breathed evenly, eyes steady, as if this moment was exactly where he belonged. The whispers around the circle grew louder. Some laughed, shaking their heads, expecting the human to collapse under the first blow. Others leaned forward with curiosity, waiting to see what would happen. For them, this was entertainment. For the human, this was something more. The reptilian finally spoke again, his voice a thunder in the stillness. "If you want to train here, softbone, then prove you belong. Show us that your fragile frame can carry the weight of warriors. Or walk out now, and save yourself from humiliation." The human tilted his head slightly, then replied with the same calm tone. "I did not come here to leave. What do you want me to prove?" A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. The alien champion grinned, pointing toward a massive training device in the corner. It was a block of stone-like metal, carved with alien markings. It was not only heavy, it was designed to test endurance, technique, and raw strength. Only the strongest students of the academy could lift it. Even among aliens, only a few could carry it for more than a few seconds. "Lift it," the reptilian commanded. His grin widened as he saw the human's eyes move toward the weight. "If you can make it rise, then maybe you are worth the air in this room." A wave of laughter spread through the gym. The insectoid creatures clicked their mandibles in amusement. The horned warriors slapped each other's arms, grinning wide. The reptilian students hissed with confidence, already certain of the outcome. For them, this was not a challenge. It was an execution of pride. The human would fail, and they would laugh, and the order of the academy would remain. But the human did not show fear. He did not laugh. He walked toward the block, slow and steady, as if every step carried meaning. His shoes tapped lightly against the floor, and the silence returned with his movement. The crowd leaned closer, breaths held, waiting for the moment of collapse. The block was taller than the human's waist and wider than his shoulders. Its dark surface glistened under the gym lights. Marks and scratches showed where claws and scales had failed to lift it properly. The human placed both hands on the cold stone. He crouched, testing its weight with a small tug. The block did not move. Snickers filled the air. "Too heavy," someone muttered. "He will break his arms," another laughed. The reptilian champion stood with arms crossed, a cruel smile never leaving his face. The human closed his eyes for a moment. His breath slowed. He adjusted his feet, his stance, his grip. He did not rush. He did not shake. He focused. Then, with a deep breath, he pulled. At first, nothing happened. The block was unmoved, solid, unshaken. The laughter grew louder, sharper. Some aliens clapped, mocking the human's effort. But then, something changed. The human shifted his posture, angled his back, tightened his arms, and pressed with his legs. He did not fight the block with blind force. He moved with precision. A sound filled the air, a low grind, a scrape of stone against the floor. The block lifted, only slightly, only an inch at first. But it moved. The laughter stopped. The silence returned. The human's muscles strained, sweat forming on his forehead, but his face remained calm, controlled. His arms did not shake wildly, his stance did not break. He held the weight with technique, not power. 1 inch became 2. 2 became 3. The block rose higher, against all expectation. The crowd leaned closer, eyes wide, mouths open. The insectoids froze mid-clatter. The horned warriors stopped laughing. Even the reptilians, proud and sure of their strength, stared in disbelief. The human exhaled slowly, then lowered the block back to the floor, carefully, gently. The heavy sound echoed through the gym like thunder. He did not drop it. He placed it down with control. Then he stood, wiping his hands on his cloth wraps, breathing steady once again. No one spoke for several seconds. The silence was complete. Then whispers began again, but this time they were different. "He lifted it," one alien said, voice shaking. "Impossible," another whispered. "How can soft muscles do that?" The reptilian champion's grin had vanished. His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. He had expected failure, laughter, humiliation. Instead, he had seen something else, something he could not explain. The human had lifted the block not with raw power, but with precision, with focus, with something deeper. And that made it worse. The champion stepped forward, his tail lashing angrily against the floor. His voice was louder now, echoing through the gym. "A trick. That is all it was. Technique without strength is nothing. You think lifting a stone makes you a warrior? Prove yourself in combat. Show us you can survive a real fight." The crowd roared in agreement. They wanted more. They wanted to see the human tested, broken, destroyed. Their voices mixed in a storm of demands. "Fight him. Show us his weakness. Crush him." The human stood silently, listening to the voices, watching the reptilian champion. Then he gave a small nod. "If that is what you need to see." The gym erupted again, excitement rushing through every alien. They formed a tight circle around the center, the space now an arena. The reptilian champion cracked his knuckles, claws gleaming under the lights. He stepped forward, towering, his presence heavy like a storm. The human, smaller, leaner, stood still, arms relaxed at his sides, his breath calm. The whispers returned, mixed with doubt and fear. Some still believed the human would fall. Others were no longer so sure. The lifting of the block had shaken their certainty. What else was this human hiding? The reptilian champion snarled, eyes glowing with anger and pride. Then prepare yourself, softbone. I will show you what real strength means. The human simply replied, voice quiet but clear, strength is more than force. The circle tightened. The silence deepened. The challenge was no longer a joke. It was no longer entertainment. It had become a battle of meaning, a question that burned in every mind. Could a human, the weakest of species, stand against a warrior of the academy? Or would he be crushed, proving what they had always believed? Every eye in the gym waited for the answer. The circle closed tighter around the two figures. The reptilian champion towered over the human, his claws flexing, muscles swelling with pride and anger. The human, smaller and leaner, stood still, calm, his body relaxed. The air inside the gym was heavy, charged with expectation. Every alien eye watched, waiting for the moment the fight would begin. For many, this was a chance to see the weakness of humanity exposed. For others, it was a moment of curiosity, a question waiting for an answer. The champion hissed, his voice low but sharp. This will not take long. His tail slammed against the floor with a loud crack. The sound echoed like a warning drum. He stepped closer, claws out, his shadow falling over the human. The human did not move. His eyes were steady, his breath calm. He had no claws, no fangs, no scales, no natural weapons. His only weapon was his will and his technique. He raised his hands slowly, not in aggression, but in readiness. His stance was simple, balanced, unshaken. The champion roared and struck first. His arm lashed out like a hammer, claws slicing through the air. The speed and power were enough to break bones, to crush stone. The human moved at the last second, his body tilting just enough. The claws missed, cutting only empty air. The human stepped aside, his motion smooth, controlled. Gasps rose from the crowd. The champion turned quickly, snarling, his tail whipping the floor again. He attacked again, this time with both arms, slashing, grabbing, trying to crush. The human dodged, weaving through the storm of strikes. Each movement was narrow, dangerous, yet precise. He did not waste energy. He did not rush. His body bent, shifted, twisted with exact timing. The claws missed again and again, scraping the floor, scratching the air. The champion grew louder, angrier. The crowd roared with excitement. Some shouted for the champion to crush him. Others shouted in disbelief at the human's survival. The silence that had filled the gym earlier was now broken with tension, with voices, with pounding hearts. The human finally struck back. Not with a heavy blow, not with claws or fists of power. He waited for the moment when the champion overextended, when his arm reached too far. The human stepped in and struck with his palm at the elbow joint. It was a simple strike, small, controlled. The champion stumbled slightly, his balance shifted. It was not pain that shocked him. It was the fact that the human had touched him at all. The reptilian growled, his eyes glowing with rage. He lunged forward, his massive body crashing like a storm. The human rolled aside, light and fast, his movements like flowing water. The champion crashed into the floor, the ground shaking. Dust rose, and the crowd shouted louder. Too fast, an insectoid whispered. He cannot win forever, a horned warrior muttered. The human stood again, stance calm, breathing steady. His face did not show fear. It showed focus, patience. He waited, always waiting for the right moment. The champion rose, fury in every motion. His claws gleamed, his scales flexed, his chest heaved with anger. You cannot hide forever, human, he roared. He rushed again, faster, his arms striking like whips. The human blocked once, twice, then stepped back, absorbing the force by moving with it. His body bent but did not break. His arms shook but did not collapse. He used the alien's force against him, sliding aside, redirecting each strike. The struggle grew harder. Sweat now covered the human's forehead. His muscles tightened, his breath deeper. Each dodge, each block cost him energy. His body, smaller and weaker, began to feel the weight of the champion's power. He could not match the strength. He could only survive through skill. The crowd felt the shift. They saw the human's arms tremble, his body strain. They saw his chest rise quicker, his steps slower. The laughter began to return. "He is tiring," someone shouted. "The fight is over," another cried. But the human did not break. He did not fall. Even as his body struggled, his eyes remained sharp. He saw every strike, every movement, every flaw. He endured, waiting for the single moment that mattered. The champion, too, began to change. His strikes were powerful, but they grew wilder. His roar was loud, but his breath grew heavy. His tail smashed the floor, but slower than before. Anger burned his focus away. He wanted to crush the human quickly, to end the humiliation, but the human refused to fall. And with each missed strike, his rage grew. The struggle turned into a battle of wills. Strength against patience. Power against technique. Fury against calm. The crowd no longer laughed. They no longer shouted insults. Their voices lowered, their eyes wide, their breaths sharp. They watched something they had never imagined, a human standing against one of their champions, not with brute force, but with will. Finally, the moment came. The champion swung with all his strength, his arm wide, his body leaning forward. The human stepped in, closer, inside the arc of the strike. He moved with perfect timing, catching the alien's weight. His small body shifted, his legs bent, his arms guided. With a swift turn of his hip, he redirected the force. The champion's massive body lifted from the ground for a moment, his balance destroyed. The crowd gasped, their voices lost in shock. The reptilian crashed to the floor, the sound echoing through the gym like thunder. Dust rose again, filling the air. The human stood above him, chest rising, sweat dripping, but his stance still firm, his eyes still steady. He did not roar. He did not laugh. He did not boast. He simply waited, calm and quiet. The champion groaned, pushing himself up. His pride was broken more than his body. His eyes burned with shame, with disbelief. "Impossible," he hissed. "You are nothing. You are weak. You are human." The human replied, his voice soft but clear, "Weak does not mean defeated." The words cut deeper than any strike. The crowd murmured again, fear and respect mixing in their voices. They had seen the human struggle, sweat, and strain. They had seen him pushed to his limits. But they had also seen him endure, survive, and turn weakness into strength. And that truth unsettled them more than any victory of raw power. The struggle was not over. The champion rose again, refusing to accept defeat. His pride demanded more. His rage demanded blood. But in the hearts of the watchers, something new had already begun to grow. A question they did not want to ask, but could not ignore. If one human could struggle like this, could stand against a champion with nothing but will and patience, then what could many humans do together? What kind of threat did they truly represent? The gym was no longer a place of laughter and pride. It had become a battlefield of meaning, a stage for a lesson none of them expected. The human had struggled. The human had endured. And the struggle itself had shaken the walls of the academy. The fight was not finished, but the fear had already begun. The gym floor trembled as the reptilian champion rose once again. His chest heaved, his scales glistened with sweat, and his eyes burned with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Never before had he been forced to fight so long against one who appeared so weak. The human stood across from him, smaller, tired, his body clearly strained. Yet his eyes were calm, and his stance was unshaken. That calmness infuriated the champion more than any strike could. The circle of students closed in even tighter. Every alien present was silent now, holding their breath, watching with unblinking eyes. This was no longer a game, no longer a joke. This was a battle that had turned into something larger, something symbolic. It was strength against patience, fury against control. The outcome would be remembered, whispered about, perhaps even feared. The reptilian champion roared, his voice shaking the walls of the gym. No more games. I will end this. His massive tail lashed the floor, sending cracks through the stone tiles. He charged forward, his claws raised high. The ground shook beneath his steps. The human did not move immediately. He waited, eyes locked on the charging figure. At the very last second, he shifted. His body bent, his feet slid, and he avoided the crushing blow by an inch. The champion's claws tore into the floor, ripping deep scars into the stone, but the human was already behind him. Gasps filled the air. The human struck, not with heavy power but with precision. His fist landed against the reptilian's side, right between the ribs. It was not enough to break, not enough to injure, but enough to sting, enough to disrupt balance. The champion snarled, spinning with fury, his tail sweeping wide like a giant whip. The human ducked, rolling across the floor, rising to his feet again in one smooth motion. The fight continued, a storm of power against a stream of control. The reptilian struck with all his might, claws flashing, muscles bulging, but the human was always just beyond reach. Sometimes he stepped aside, sometimes he bent low, sometimes he redirected the force with small, subtle movements. He was not winning with blows, he was surviving with patience. But the struggle grew harder. The human's breaths grew heavier, his arms sore, his legs strained. Each dodge cost him energy, each roll scraped his skin against the rough floor. He was tiring, and the champion saw it. A cruel grin returned to the reptilian's face. You cannot run forever, Softbone. Your body will break before mine does. The champion attacked with renewed fury, faster and harder. One claw sliced across the human's shoulder, leaving a shallow cut. Blood welled up, red against pale skin. The crowd gasped. For a moment, some thought the fight was finished. But the human did not fall. He gritted his teeth, adjusted his stance, and raised his hands again. His eyes still held that same calm fire. The reptilian laughed darkly. You bleed now. You feel pain. You cannot last. He lunged again, both arms swinging down like hammers. The human stepped aside, guided the strike with his palm, and let the champion's weight fall forward. The reptilian stumbled, and in that instant, the human struck his knee with a sharp kick. The giant roared, stumbling further, his balance shaken. The crowd erupted in shouts. Some cheered for the champion, demanding he finish it. Others were silent, their hearts conflicted, their minds disturbed by what they were seeing. The human bled, the human struggled, yet the human endured. And every time he endured, he defied everything they believed. The fight dragged on. Minutes felt like hours. The champion's roars grew louder, his strikes wilder. He was a storm losing control, and the human was the calm within it. The human's body screamed with exhaustion, his cuts burned, his lungs fought for air. But his will did not break. He continued to move, to wait, to watch. Finally, the moment came. The champion raised both arms high, preparing to crush the human with his full strength. His chest was exposed, his balance unsteady from rage and exhaustion. The human saw it. He stepped forward, closer instead of away. The movement was sudden, unexpected. He struck once, twice, 3 times, precise blows to weak points along the ribs, the side, the throat. The reptilian staggered, stunned. His roar cut short as his breath caught. The human did not stop. He moved behind the champion, his arms locking around the thick neck, his legs bracing. It was a dangerous move, reckless for a smaller fighter, but perfectly timed. The champion thrashed, twisted, roared in fury, but his movements were uncoordinated, his strength wasted. The human held on, his grip firm, his breath steady. His face was a mask of focus, not anger, not pride, only determination. The champion struggled, slammed his back against the wall, tried to shake the human off, but the grip did not break. His roars grew weaker, his body heavier. The crowd was frozen in silence. Every student watched, unable to look away. The reptilian champion, the strongest of them, the symbol of raw power, was trapped by the smallest creature in the room. Fear spread like a shadow across their faces. At last, the champion fell to one knee, then to both. His arms dropped, his tail fell still. The human released his grip, stepping back, breathing hard, sweat and blood on his skin. He did not strike again. He did not celebrate. He simply stood, chest rising and falling, his eyes steady on the fallen champion. The gym was silent. No laughter, no whispers, no jeers. Only silence. The reptilian groaned, lifting his head to look at the human. His voice was weak, broken. How can this be? You are human. You are weak. The human answered quietly, each word carrying weight. Weakness is not the same as defeat. Strength is not only in muscles. It is in patience. It is in will. It is in the choice to endure when others give up. The words struck deeper than the blows. The crowd shifted uneasily. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. The human had not won with raw power. He had not been stronger in body. But he had been stronger in spirit, in control, in determination. And that kind of strength frightened them. The champion collapsed to the floor, unconscious but alive. The human stood alone in the circle, breathing hard, covered in sweat and blood. Yet his stance was firm, his presence undeniable. The silence stretched, heavy and thick, until finally the whispers began. He defeated him, one voice said. A human defeated a champion, another whispered. If one can do this, what about more of them? Fear spread through the gym. Not loud, not open, but quiet and deep, like a shadow filling every corner. The aliens looked at the human differently now. Not as weak prey. Not as fragile creatures. But as something dangerous, something unknown, something that could not be measured by muscle or scale. The human picked up his bag from the floor. His body ached, his wounds stung, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. He looked once at the circle of students, then at the fallen champion, and finally at the door. Without another word, he walked out, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The academy gym would never be the same again. That day had become a story, one that would spread far beyond the walls. The day a human walked into the gym, faced a champion, struggled, fought, and endured. The day fear spread not because of claws or fangs, but because of will. The fight was over. But the shadow it left would last forever. The gym was quiet after the human walked out. Silence hung over the alien students like a heavy fog. 4 hours, no one moved, no one spoke, no one dared to laugh. The day had begun as a normal training session, full of pride and confidence. Now, it had ended with something completely different. The strongest of the academy had been defeated by one of the weakest species, and that fact burned in the minds of every witness. The reptilian champion lay on the floor, his chest heaving, eyes closed but body trembling. Pain was not just in his muscles or his cuts, it was in his pride. He had believed himself unbeatable, a living symbol of power. And yet, he had been undone by a human. Not by strength, but by patience, skill, and determination. The thought gnawed at him, igniting a fear he had never known. The quiet of the gym was deafening, and even the strongest aliens felt it. Whispers spread slowly at first, almost as if they were testing the air. "Did you see that?" an insectoid asked. "A human. He really did it." "Impossible," hissed a horned warrior. "No human should be able to do that. We are stronger, faster, smarter." "But he endured. He lasted when no one thought he could," another whispered. Their voices trembled with a mix of awe and fear. The human had shown them something they could not deny. Even their greatest strength had been beaten, not by power, but by will. The students looked at one another, faces pale, eyes wide. Some felt shame for underestimating the human. Some felt unease, a strange sense of vulnerability they had never experienced. The academy, a place of pride and superiority, had been shaken to its core by one individual who refused to break. And that shook more than the body. It shook belief itself. The reptilian champion finally pushed himself upright, groaning with effort. His claws scraped the floor as he looked around. He expected scorn, laughter, or pity, but instead he found quiet respect, even fear, in the eyes of his fellow students. He had faced the human, and in the end, he had been outmaneuvered, outlasted, and outwilled. The realization was bitter, almost unbearable. He lowered his head slightly, acknowledging the truth without words. The human had not shouted. The human had not claimed victory. He had only endured. That simple act, so unassuming yet so powerful, had earned something stronger than fear, respect. Even the instructors of the academy, who had been observing from the sidelines, were taken aback. Their judgments of species and strength were challenged. This human, this small and seemingly weak creature, had altered their understanding of power. They had relied too long on muscle, on natural advantages, on history. This human had shown them that mind, patience, and will could surpass all of that. The gym remained silent as the human disappeared from sight. The echo of his steps lingered in the minds of every alien present. They could not forget how he had moved, how he had dodged, how he had endured strikes that should have broken him. They could not forget the precision of his movements, the calm fire in his eyes, the unwavering focus even when his body screamed with exhaustion. A small insectoid creature finally spoke, breaking the silence. If one human can do this, what would many of them be capable of? The words spread like wildfire. Conversations erupted quietly, carefully, as fear and admiration intertwined. Humans, once dismissed as weak, were now considered unpredictable, dangerous, and remarkable. Every alien student began to reconsider their assumptions, their pride, and even their own weaknesses. The human had not just fought, he had changed the way everyone in the room thought. The reptilian champion rose fully, his body aching, his pride wounded, but his mind opening to a new truth. He looked at the empty space where the human had stood, and in that moment, a seed of understanding grew. The human had shown that true strength was not measured in raw power alone, but in endurance, strategy, patience, and the unyielding spirit to keep going. That lesson was hard, bitter, and unforgettable. The fear that spread was subtle but deep. It was not fear of immediate attack, not fear of pain or injury. It was the fear of the unknown potential. Humans, they realized, could not be measured, could not be easily defeated, and could not be underestimated. The quiet respect grew alongside the fear, a mixture that would define every encounter with humanity in the years to come. Instructors whispered to one another, students glanced at each other in new ways, and the champion, once full of arrogance, now held a contemplative gaze. They had all witnessed the rise of something different, something that could not be contained by the rules of the academy or by tradition. The human had taught them a lesson they could not forget. As the sun began to set outside the academy, the students filed out of the gym, each lost in thought. They walked silently, carrying the image of the human in their minds, the calm stance, the precise movements, the endurance against impossible odds. And with each step, the story of the human spread, growing, becoming legend. The day the human walked into the gym and defeated the champion became more than a story of one fight. It became a story of humanity's spirit, a tale of resilience, patience, and courage. Fear and respect spread equally among those who witnessed it. The academy would never see strength the same way again. The human had left a mark, not on the walls, not on the floor, but on the minds and hearts of every alien who had watched. And far beyond the academy, whispers would spread across planets and star systems. Tales of humans who could endure, who could fight not with brute force but with will, patience, and cunning. The fear that spread that day was not fleeting, it was enduring, a warning, a revelation. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were not weak. They were something new, something unpredictable, something that even the strongest aliens had to respect. The gym lights dimmed, casting long shadows over the floor. Silence reclaimed the room, but the energy remained. Fear and respect hung together like intertwined shadows, waiting for the next human to enter, the next story to unfold, the next lesson to be learned. And somewhere, deep in every student's mind, a thought lingered. Strength was not only in the body, it was in the heart, the mind, and the will to never give up.